The Path to Authenticity is brought to you by GIA Miami. Founded by world-class mental health experts, GIA provides advanced care for difficult-to-treat conditions, including anxiety, medication-resistant depression, and obsessive-compulsive disorder. Using state-of-the-art methods, GIA can help people recover from conditions when more traditional approaches can't. Dr. Antonello Bonci has assembled an expert team serving international clientele in a modern and resplendent Miami setting. If you or someone you love is suffering from depression, anxiety, OCD, or other mental health concerns, call GIA at 833-713-0828. You can learn more about GIA by clicking the link in the show notes or by visiting giamiami.com.
Thank you for listening to The Path to Authenticity. My name's Tom Gentry. I think of this show as the opposite of small talk. You'll hear real conversations with real people who know who they are. We talk about what makes them who they are, how they became who they are, and how we might become truer expressions of who we are.
This is John Thomas, and this is The Path to Authenticity.
If this is your first time here, thanks for checking it out. If not, thanks for coming back. I'm Tom Gentry, and this is episode 180 of The Path to Authenticity, part 2 of my conversation with Psychology Today publisher John Thomas. So, I'm working on some new stuff for the podcast and planning on taking a little bit of a new approach in 2023. So I'll be sharing more about that as time goes on. Got some great episodes coming up here shortly, including one with my friend Dr. Dina Sadek. And lots of other good stuff coming. So hope you enjoy this. Here you go, part 2 with John Thomas. You and I have talked about this before, that, you know, for me, what really made a difference was I knew I wanted my life to mean something. And the problem I was having when I was drinking like that is I felt like my life didn't really mean anything. It wasn't going anywhere. It didn't matter. And I wanted it to matter. Mm-hmm. And so that's what I found that in recovery, you know.
Let me ask you, when you would drink, though, in those moments of, you know, being high on booze, did it become fantastical? Did you fantasize about the life
yes,
this ideal life? Did you have these moments of just kind of overblown like, look at me in my mind's eye, how great I am?
Yes. Well, there's a little that, you know, I had this BS romantic narrative going on with myself where, you know, I mentioned Hemingway earlier, you know, he was an alcoholic. I mean, he drank a lot, and, you know, so I kind of romanticized it that way.
But there are many young men who romanticize Hemingway.
Absolutely.
And, you know, Fitzgerald.
Yes.
I think it's like a rite of passage. I honestly do. I think that's, you know, to a lot of young guys, especially, you know, Fitzgerald and Hemingway and Steinbeck was like their Taylor Swift.
Yeah. Well, and, you know, I will say this, you know, that I knew at a very young age that I didn't know how, but I knew I wanted to help people somehow. I knew that I had that in me. And you know, what has happened with my alcoholism, and this is what I believe about our wounds. That's my wound. And that's, once you're in touch with your wound, and then you can use it to help other people. And for me, in the beginning, it was my alcoholism, but, it's something that I believe pretty strongly, that a friend of mine says. He was a IV heroin user from New York. And he would say, I wasn't sticking a needle in my arm at 13 years old because everything was okay. And, I wasn't drinking in middle school because everything was okay. Now, it wasn't as, I don't want to paint a terribly dreary picture, but I wasn't okay.
That part. I didn't know that you were drinking in middle school. And that's
yeah.
part of the story.
Yeah. I mean,
I either didn't hear.
Well, no, I didn't say it, but the truth is I don't even remember how young I was the first time I drank. I really don't know. I mean, it was that young. I always had access to it. It was always there.
Well, Tom, as a journalist, you kind of buried the lead. I mean,
I did. You're right. You're right.
You really did. I mean,
you're right. Well, to be quite honest, though,
and if you don't even remember how.
But here's the thing. Here's the thing about me burying the lead. This is supposed to be about you.
Well, I'm enjoying.
I know you are, and I am too. And I just kind of went with it.
I think I'm loving the Tom, the tale of Tom, the Tom saga. It's great, and it's kind of letting me in on the secret of why you're such a good listener, because I think you're really, you've been through a lot and you're sensitive to others. There's one thing about being a sensitive person, but part of being a sensitive person is being sensitive to others, not just yourself. Right. I mean, that's the big, that's the big secret of sensitivity. It's one thing to be, my mother used to say that to me, mm-hmm. and in other ways she would say it. One time we were in the car in Texas, and I was in, I think, junior high, and I was mouthing off about something and whatever, and it's just she and I in the car alone, and she screeches her big old car to the side of the road, gravel sprays out everywhere, in this little Texas, probably little farm to market road. And she leans over in the car and she looks at me and she says, John, I want you to listen to me, and I want you to listen to me very carefully. I want you to stop trying to be interesting all the time. All you do is try to be interesting. Look at me, how interesting I am. Be interested, and I promise you, things are going to work out just fine.
That's great.
Wasn't that great advice? It was really great. I don't know that it totally penetrated at that age, but I mean, she made her point, and it stuck with me, and it's true. And I, the thing about you is that you are, you're a guy who is, sensitive to others, and you're a good listener, and it kind of makes sense now with what you, what you've been through, in life and in your pursuits. Mm. So what made you stay in Florida though, Tom, after you never went back to Indiana after?
No, I really needed to, first of all, I wanted to live somewhere that had more, really, a little more, like, I wanted to work at an art gallery in Palm Beach,
Right.
I wanted to be able to experience things like that. And
you didn't think about, hell, I'm going to pack it up and go to LA or New York? Or
no,
Chicago?
I did. I started to think about, I missed the people in the Midwest, mm-hmm. Which, they're probably just like, Texas is a notch or two higher on the niceness scale than the Midwest, but people from the Midwest are a lot nicer than people in South Florida. It just is what it is.
I don't know about that. That's true about Texas.
Well, I'm
a proud Texan. I still have my, I have a house in Texas, and I still have a Texas driver's license, and I'm a son of Texas, and always will be, and it's part of me. But there's something to be said for, like in New York, when someone says something to you, no matter how crass or, kind of terse it might be, where they stand. You know
Right.
what they're, you know where they're coming
Yeah.
from, and there are no pretenses, and it's not veiled in anything. But a lot of times in places like Texas that I love, but
There's the BS factor.
Hi, how you, darling?
Right.
They will turn
Bless
around
your
and say the
heart.
most
Yeah.
bless your heart, and they say the most dreadful things about you.
Yeah.
Things that just unbelievably horrible
Yeah.
things within 2 minutes of you turning your back. So,
well, and there's the equivalent for places like Indiana as well. But, so I at one point started to think about, moving back to the Midwest, one of the, like Chicago or Cleveland or somewhere like that. And I started to look around for jobs. By this time, I was a few years into my career in the treatment industry, and I had gotten a job. And, I was in the marketing department, and I handled the advertising budget and the marketing plan, most of the marketing plan for Hazelden's Southeast region. So the Carolinas, Georgia, Florida, Mississippi, Alabama.
Right.
So I had kind of married my communications journalism background with the treatment thing. And it, by this time I had already, gone through counselor's training. So it really kind of worked out pretty well and served me well because.
Well, if you were doing that, if you were doing the kind of the outreach,
Mm-hmm.
we'll call it, and then you were doing counselor training too. I mean, Tom, you really were a renaissance guy of recovery, because most people that they usually kind of stay in one channel. A lot of the
Right.
people that are in outreach are, first of all, not necessarily,
Clinicians
addicts
or
themselves,
Right.
but they're great marketers.
Well, there's
usually.
that. And then there's there are a lot of marketing people in the treatment industry who really don't know anything about marketing. I mean, I got the job because I could write, and I started
Right.
doing internal communication stuff and some, writing, letters and speeches and radio spots and all kinds of stuff. I had
you're good
that.
with people, and you're good with
Yeah.
people. You know how to talk to people. You're not shy about that.
Right.
That's
Yeah.
hugely important.
Yeah.
Right.
So that, it was kind of a natural path, but then what happened a little later is I ended up, with the job for a very small facility that was a startup. And, I knew how to do everything. I mean, I could promote it. I had a book of business. I knew how to work with guys, and it went really, really well.
Is it still around, that facility?
It actually just closed about a year and a half ago. And I'll tell you, I mean, this is my interesting story. One of them, I shouldn't say only, but so, I started this woman who I had worked with at Hazelden. We each had worked there for 5 years, and those 5 years overlapped by about 6 months. So we knew each other. And at that time, everybody was paying cash for treatment. People were literally, if they didn't have the money, they were taking out second mortgages on their homes to put their kids through treatment. And to the tune of $20,000, $40,000,
Mm-hmm.
And then there were people of means who were going to treatment. And when it came time for transitional living, for the halfway house or recovery home, whatever you want to call it, there was really nowhere nice for them to go, at least not around here. So it's like either you go home and you end up drinking again, or you go live on the railroad tracks in a place that's furnished from secondhand furniture and, not well taken care of. So this lady had the idea of, we're going to do a nice place. There are people who can afford to pay more. We're going to do it right. We're going to furnish it well. It's going to be clean. They're going to be nice homes.
Mm-hmm.
And so she found the property. She and another guy wrote the business plan.
How long ago was this?
This was 2004, 2005. And then, at some point she realized she needed to hire somebody to manage it. And long story short, I ended up being that person.
And that was in West Palm.
That was in Delray Beach.
Delray. When
so,
Delray really
and it was a place called the Sanctuary in Delray Beach, and it was at that time a 10-bed facility for men. About 9 months after we opened, we had it full for the first time, and then within a year or so, we bought another house, and eventually it had about 30 beds, and eventually worked with women. But what happened is, she had worked for the Crossroads at Antigua Foundation prior to this. And that's Eric Clapton's charitable organization.
Right.
And she left to do this. And eventually, every time that facility would have a staff member in the States, they would end up coming to see us. And they started to send us some clients. And then eventually they said, let's talk about how we could collaborate. And then 6 months later, they bought the whole thing and said, keep doing what you're doing. Eric Clapton wanted a facility in the United States. And so he bought this facility that I was running, and I ended up essentially working for him for about 3 years. Mm-hmm. So that was a really cool experience.
How was that experience?
It was awesome. It was great. I got to spend time with him a few different times. Great guy. I wouldn't say that about every celebrity that I've met in recovery, but I definitely would about him. He's got a heart for helping people. That's why he's done this.
Skin in the game.
Absolutely.
Skin in the game, and I think he's sincere.
He really is. He is sincere.
And doesn't have to do this. This is not.
Well, here's my story to give you an idea of what he's really like. I ended up having dinner with him one night in Palm Beach. And I don't know how well you know Palm Beach, but there's
pretty well.
Beach A?
Yes, of course. I love that place.
Beach A is an incredible Italian restaurant that has locations around the world. I think the main original restaurant's in Milan. It's a real Italian restaurant.
It's wonderful.
It's awesome. So it's his favorite place. And so we had dinner there. And, when you live in a place like this where there's lots of money, and you see, you see classes, if you pay attention, classes of people. And, like you see the guys who are the maitre d's, and then you see the guys who are the busboys. Mm-hmm. And, the bus boys, the kitchen help, they tend to have darker skin. They're from South America, Central America. Sorry, that's Caesar. So long story short, when we're sitting here and we're talking about treatment and what options are available, and this is this world of treatment where, it's for people of means who can pay for it. And this is really a business of the haves and the have-nots. It's sad to say, but it's true. If you want good treatment, you really have to have money to get it. And so we're sitting at this restaurant and we're talking about treatment, and you see a couple busboys creeping out, clearing off tables, and you see he's observing them, and he looks at me and he says, where does that guy get treatment? That's what he wanted to know. Mm-hmm. And, he started this facility in Antigua really as a Robin Hood scheme. The plan was there was no treatment there for the islanders, for anyone in that part of the world. And he thought, I can get people from the States and from Europe. They can pay a decent rate and we can make enough from them. We'll always have a third of the beds set aside for islanders. And that's what he has done. That's what he's done all this time. So, he's really a man of the people. He is. That's
so good to hear, because a lot of facilities that we,
I kind of realized as I started to get into this podcast thing that, I really kind of got to be all in, that if people are going to listen to this, they're going to need to be able to identify with me and connect with me, and that I can't hold back. And And so I've wanted to find a way to tell my story, but, also I don't want to, talk for an hour and bore people. So I've just kind of decided to let it come out gradually as I talk to people. And a lot of it has come out in this conversation with you.
I think that's the trick. I think that's the trick to successful podcasting, in my non-expert opinion. But I'm expert in the sense that I love podcasts, and
now tell me, when you say that's the trick, what do you mean?
The trick is the conversational aspect. And it's kind of like a car ride with someone that, those conversations that you have in a car are always somehow, well, usually better, unless it's a really long car ride. But the conversations that you have in a car are man, so much gets exposed, so much is revealed.
It's a good place to talk. It really is.
Exactly. And so there's an intimacy to podcasts that if they're done in a way that's natural, and it's a conversation that is has purpose, but it's also easy. I think that makes it a joy for a listener to latch onto and kind of they're there with you. They're having that conversation with you in their own heads.
Right.
And that's what I get out of them. I listen to a ton of podcasts because I'm up super early every day doing things, and I don't want to be tethered to a television screen or my computer, and I can do all the things that I do and listen and get something out of it and identify or not, or think, no, they're totally wrong, and get to hear perspectives that are sometimes totally aligned with how I'm thinking, and others that couldn't be more opposing. But I never, I've never regretted. I'm trying to think if I've ever thought, oh, what a waste of time that podcast was. I don't think I ever really have.
Yeah.
I don't think I
mean, for me, usually if it's something like that, I'm usually I'm turning it off in the beginning.
Yeah, you're in and out. You know very quickly.
Yeah.
You know pretty quickly.
But the ones that I really like, that I listen to, are, conversations like this, or maybe funnier, I mean, not to say that we're not being funny, but there's some that's the purpose, just to make people laugh,
Is that a challenge, Tom? Is that a challenge for me?
It wasn't a challenge. It wasn't. Yeah.
I'm accepting that challenge. We'll have to.
Well, I mean, we might have to do this again, John. We might have to do this again.
So, because there's no real.
Because it's fun. No,
it's super fun.
It is.
We probably need a little more content. We probably need a little more meat on the bones. But the bones have been super fun.
Yeah. Well,
we probably should add more. The thrust of your podcast is, this authenticity thing, which is, man, that's something everyone can identify with. Everyone feels at one point or another, am I really on purpose?
Right.
Am I on purpose? Or did I somehow get lost? Like, where in the world is me? I'm, a father, a brother, where is me? And those feelings, that angst comes and goes, certainly in a lot in our lives when we're younger. But I think it raises its head throughout life, and that's okay, because the trick is just to be able to answer it and to look at it and go, okay, well, if I do feel that way, why do I feel that way? And let me get back to at least the search for my authentic self. And that's, in my mind, learning to hear your own voice.
Right.
And not just these voices that,
and also to trust it. That's hard. That can be really hard.
Because we're fed information all the time from outside sources, and well-meaning a lot. Sometimes they're not a lot of times they're not well-meaning, but for the most part, they're well-meaning. But they are limiting.
Right.
And it's not until, and this is a universal truth. It's not, what I'm saying is not anything new or revolutionary or I don't have some big secret here. It's just universally true, is that, listening to your own head and heart and voice and trusting it and going with it with courage that's the trick. And it brings a ton of happiness.
Yeah.
It really does.
Yeah. Well, that's really kind of what this is for me, this podcast thing. I've talked to you, I write too, obviously. And, there's that part of my life, but, I'm continuing to do some counseling and case management and coaching and stuff like that, working independently mostly. But I want.
Do you find it hard to work independently? Because in the course of my career, I have worked in a million different media, not a million different, but some really. I've been lucky. I've worked great places, and I've also had my own business too, which was an advertising and promotional agency. And it's a totally different thing, working for yourself as opposed to, working for someone else, and also working independently.
Right.
And without a ton of other people around you and
structure.
Mm-hmm.
Well,
structure, you can impose structure no matter where you are. You could be on a desert island and impose some kind of structure, but the exchange that comes from having, people around you all day.
Well, to me, that feeds me creatively too. So I've come to learn I need that. Especially with the type of writing that I'm doing, interactions with people are really important.
Well, sure.
Yeah. But, the bottom line is for me, if I'm working independently, if it's what I really want to be doing, I'm great. And if it's not, then no, I'm not all that great.
I know. Do you think that's true for everyone?
Probably on some level, I suppose some people are just robots, but I'm not,
Well, robots are just are they just so super disciplined? Because I'm a pretty disciplined individual. I am. But man, sometimes it is really, who was the guy that recently gave the commencement speech? Was he a guy from, and I'm not going to Google this or anything right now. Maybe he gave a commencement speech recently, and his message was, whoever told you that if you find, a job you love, you'll never work
a day in your life.
You'll never work a day in your life. And he said, that's total BS. No matter what you do, there are going to be days that that
it's going to be work.
It's work. And I thought, that's so true. I love what I do. I really do. But there are days that it is work, and it takes every bit of,
Well, I think that what's different is the motivation continues to be there. The motivation. It's easier to get up and get out of bed in the morning and go do whatever it is if you want to do it, and there's and also I think, if you're doing what you're passionate about, there's not as much fatigue that you're going to get from from putting your heart and I'll tell you, when I've done these conversations like this, I mean, I hang up the phone and I feel like I'm floating on air. I mean, I love it. I really do. So I know it's what I'm supposed to be doing.
Well, and you're good at it, so that helps that. I mean, if you sucked, then you probably wouldn't be floating on air.
Well, thank you. No, I probably wouldn't. It probably
be drinking it.
Maybe I would. Yeah. No, but and also, you know, I've kind of
if you had stayed in carpentry, let's just think for a second
where I'd be right now.
Like you stayed, and for whatever reason you had to, you needed to,
right,
family, you had stayed there. Do you think that you would have been able to discover, somehow figure out how to get motivated, even though it wasn't really your, passion, as you say?
Well, yeah, I think so. I hope so. I mean, if I was, one of the things I've learned in my career is, when I mentioned, helping create this business, I'm a creative guy, I'm an idea guy. And, so I never really thought about what a creative pursuit it is to start a business.
Yeah,
but it really is.
Yeah.
And
people don't. Oh, it's super.
It's gratifying, if you're really into it. I mean, it's gratifying. And there are elements of, I like working with my hands. I definitely did want to learn how to do things. I just didn't want to do it forever. And, I mean, there are ways that I use it all the time. I mean, the desk I'm using, I refinished myself, I mean, I've built shelves in my place and, I still have tools and, my little boy, when he was really little, used to tell me I was a fixer because, I fixed something.
Well,
I can usually fix stuff.
He's very insightful because you are a fixer. And don't you find also that it's working with your hands is there's a great, it's therapeutic, and it's calming, and it frees your mind when you're refinishing a piece of furniture, or when you're, working on a project that doesn't require you to, you can just kind of drill into that project with your hands, and you're then free to think about, I imagine you're thinking about, who else can I get for a podcast?
Right.
What can I talk, or what can I write? And I don't know that those same thoughts would come to you if you were just idly sitting there, with, I don't know, a notebook trying to jot down ideas.
Well, and I mean, that's definitely true. I've experienced that. When I was in my younger days, I painted a lot, and when I needed to make extra money, I would, drum up paint jobs. But like, when you're doing that repetitive kind of, especially if it's a lot of work, big job, I mean, you can kind of get lost in your head, and it is sort of meditative. And, this guy I talked to last night he's an artist, a Texan artist named Brian Phillips. And he talked about how it's a meditative experience for him.
No, you're in your own world. I discovered it when I was little and I had a paper route. And on that paper route, my entire world expanded in my head. My entire way of thinking broadened. And that sounds a little, crazy or sketchy, but it's true. I remember it. I remember that the feeling I got, as I got on the bike to throw the papers, and I knew what was going to happen. I knew that I was going to be able to, in my head, as I, threw the paper out, I knew that I was in for some kind of adventure in my own head on things I was going to come up with for like my life's plan and what I was going to do. And I mean, 1,000 things. And I'm grateful for that. In fact, I named my media company Route 224, which is my which was my paper route.
Yeah, mine was 31.59.
They don't have those anymore, do they?
I don't think so. No. I had a tough experience with the New York Times recently because I ordered the Sunday paper and it took me forever to get a paper every Sunday, but I finally.
They should be paying you to have a paper. I mean, my God, the way the newspaper business is, why did they make it an ordeal?
Yeah. Well, what's really baffling about it is, it's essentially the same people who deliver the local paper.
Right.
And they're here it's a high rise. They're here every day, so I don't know how they got it screwed up, but I ended up on the phone with people at the Times on several Sunday mornings but it finally got channeled to the right person and she fixed it. So.
Now, and you love having that Sunday paper and going through it?
Well, I've thought about it for a long time. I try to get myself to read more. I do like the Sunday paper. I mean, to me, there's the New York Times basically, and then there's every other newspaper, maybe the Washington Post or the LA Times or something. But for the most part, and I like the crossword puzzle.
How do you get your news, your daily news? Every morning.
I try to limit myself, quite honestly. I get some of it from the New York Times app.
Mm-hmm.
I try to, I work from home a lot, so I'll have the TV on sometimes, and I try to not have it on all day because I'll just get lost in it. And most of the time, they're just recycling the same couple stories all day long talking about, and it's really commentary. It's not news, which drives me crazy. You and I both, having had some journalism training, we've seen the descent of the journalistic trade. I shouldn't say that because there are great journalists out there. It's just different now, where it used to have an equal time and all that. And
it's infotainment.
It really is. It really is. And what bothers me most, I was having lunch with some folks a couple weeks ago, and I think it was when things came to a head in Venezuela, and we were in this restaurant and they had a TV on and no sound, and this lady says, "I wish I could hear it." And then she said, "Although I probably should just wait until I get home because I'll get a much clearer interpretation from Fox."
Oh my goodness.
And I thought, first of all, you're crazy. But also interpretation of the news.
Let me ask you, in that situation, because this is a different age now. This is a different time. And my reaction to people like that is so different than it would be, pre Trump.
Right.
What do you talk about in the weeds?
Yeah.
What do you say to someone like that?
Nothing. I didn't respond.
Wise.
Although
I'm not sure that I could do that anymore. I really don't. Because I think that people, I have to draw a line in the sand because there's this human, there's an aspect to living a life where the intentions at least are good.
Mm-hmm.
And we're at a point now where, the intentions aren't good.
Yeah.
And it's revealed in the name calling and everything else is so base.
Yeah.
And so,
well, I think you can pretty much boil it down to the fact that all the lying, politicians in general have always had this reputation of being a little slimy and
Always.
telling half truths or whatever, but this is totally different.
Oh,
I mean, it's just a constant barrage of lies.
Yeah.
And
it's almost a different language.
Right. And so the way having had some journalism experience and being taught about the ethical side of it, and that there are news pages and there's the op-ed page. In news, you're not really supposed to express an opinion. You shouldn't, or else it's really not news, it's opinion. But, I think it is undeniable, I think, that by and large, people who enter the journalistic profession probably lean a little left. But I think they try to be fair. And that's what it is. There's a slight bias. I think that's what it is. I think it's been always blown out of proportion because I think for the most part, if you want to be a journalist and you want to be, that, other part of the government that, helps, it's vital to a democracy, and you want to inform the people. That's really what you want to do. You're not in it to lie. You're not in it to only tell one side. So yes, there might be a little bit of a slant, but then all of a sudden,
it's a self-regulating.
But then you get the other side where, okay, we need to fight that. So then they intentionally are biased. And to the point where it's really just it's not even true. It's just distorted, and when there is, like this judge that they've had on there who says things clearly and truthfully, it's an aberration on there when and it's gotten to the point now where, I saw something where the president today was making remarks somewhere last night. What's going on with Fox? They're having a lot of Democrats on. Well, what's wrong with that? It's not supposed to be your propaganda. That's not what it is. It's supposed to be a news station. Right. So yeah, it's really discouraging. But I think people, there are a lot of sheep in this world, and I've seen it in jobs. Yes. There are a lot of followers, and there aren't a lot of one thing I will say. There's some things that my parents gave me that I really, really appreciate. Work ethic. They taught me to stand up for what's right and speak up, even if it's not popular. But I lost my train of thought. What was I going to say, John?
You're talking the sheep and then
oh yeah. Well, you think for yourself. Right. You think for yourself. That's what your brain is for.
They gave you first of all, they gave you a lot.
Right.
Your parents, they gave you lots of gifts, and I'm sure the same can be said for your siblings too. But I know you, and they gave you they gave you a big fat brain and lots of gifts, and that's probably one of the biggest ones is this thinking independently.
Right.
It makes a world of difference, and it says so much about one's integrity,
right?
As an individual. And you're right. There are so many sheep that have been led down this path that has been such trickery and oh man, I don't know.
Well, and it's beyond just politics too, I mean, it's
well, that's what I mean. This is not a political
right.
I draw the line in the sand. This is not a political stance that I'm taking. This is a stance of being, a person, a human,
right,
who, is in this world
and who is authentic, who is authentic and in such a way that, to live with himself or herself
have to, we have to look out for our brothers and sisters in this world, and not just malign them at every turn. And that's what's happened.
Yeah.
And it is like nothing any of us have ever witnessed. And
well, at least not in this country.
No, not in this country. You're right.
But you know what? I believe that it's gonna, I really do. I get discouraged. I become afraid of what's going to happen to our country, because I love this country. I really do. And, the constant Caesar, man, I can't have that. Right. Hold on just a second. No, the constitution of this, it really is in a lot of ways a masterpiece. The way this government is structured, all the different points of access. And I think what's going to happen is the will of the good in the American people is going to prevail, because, we still have good judges, who are willing to say, there are no Trump judges. There are no Obama judges. They're judges. And, that's, well,
that's all fine and good, just so long as there's not trickery.
Right. But,
and things aren't being, on this sly, right, manipulated in a way that puts someone like him, puts him.
But I think there are enough people, I think there are enough people who really love our country, who got into government for the right reasons, because they wanted to do good, because they believed in the rule of law. I think it's going to all come out in the wash. And what I really hope is that we'll be better for it, because it will have opened people's eyes. Because I think what the real problem is that we don't vote. That's the problem. Not enough people vote. And I think if we had better voter turnout in all of the election cycles, not just the presidential election cycles, if more people cared, there are so many people who are just so disaffected when it comes to politics at all. And I think, one of the things I would like to be able to do is to find a way to reach people and to get them to re-engage in politics and in their community again, because, there's just so much cynicism. Do
you think they feel it's out of their reach or not?
I think they have lives and they don't want to get bogged down in it. That's what it is.
Right.
I mean, I think a lot of people my age, I don't pay any attention to politics. I'll hear that a lot. Well, I've just never been, I grew up in a home where at the kitchen table, we talked about politics. I mean, so it's just been natural, for me to be involved. And I lean left, but I also, I was taught you vote your conscience. Mm-hmm. You don't vote a straight ticket. You vote your conscience.
Right.
And I voted for presidents of, I voted for independents. I've voted for Republicans. I've voted for Democrats. It's who I feel like is the most honest person, the best person at the time. And these days, to me, I feel like the more sincerity you find is on the left. How
about diving into that kind of public service yourself? Would you ever run for anything locally in Florida?
I don't know. Maybe that's something to think about. That's crossed my mind a couple times in the last few months, especially with all this stuff going on. I don't know. If I see what my life has become is, how do I do the most good?
Right.
In the beginning of my career, in the beginning of my career as working as a counselor and working with clients, I felt like that was how I could do the most good. As years went on, it became, I train other people to do things the way that I do them. And then, it's their ripple effects. And, what it becomes is you replicate yourself. you know, and now I feel like for what I have to give and what I want to teach and pass along, I need to be doing things like this. I need to be, you know, writing. I need to be speaking. I need to be, I want to, you know, I want to eventually, get into doing retreats and stuff like that. And, I have a lot of, there's a lot I want to do. And a lot of it has to do with helping men. I've talked to you about, you know, I want to help men be better men. You know, I think, and I think I have some unique ideas about how to approach that, you know, there's an appetite for it.
It was, and there should be. The appetite is warranted with everything happening in the world, specifically in the U.S. and what it means to be a man,
right?
Now, and you know, and that whole conversation that you would have with men has changed so much in the past 5 years of what to be, you know, what men have to be wary of, and what does the today's man, you know, look like? What does he, you know, where is his place?
Well, and here's where I have kind of fallen with all that, because, you know, it's something I've thought about, as you know, a lot over the past few years. You know, working with young guys, you know, being a man, having been a husband, being divorced, being a father of a son, you know, this idea of what does it mean to be a man has just come up recurringly over the years. And, you know, working with clients and their families, you know, we don't do a good job of teaching each other how to be men at all. And probably, you know, women do better at that.
Well, the questions aren't the same for a woman.
They're not. They're not.
Woman, being a woman is totally different,
right?
And it's impossible to compare.
I guess I'm saying we're not great at teaching each other how to be good human beings in general, you know.
But we're not great because the bar is so much
right.
It's different, and in many ways it's higher, and I don't care how.
Well, and you know, it has a lot to do with emotional imbalance and not knowing how to deal with the emotional part of ourselves. You know, to me, it's like the idea that
really, because I think it's the expectation for men is higher in terms of men rising to the occasion and self-assuredness and knowing yourself. I think that in this culture is, and not a bad thing, but it's different. So it's a little harder to teach young guys than it is, you know, a young woman a girl coming into womanhood. You know, the options are far more prodigious. It's a different, the challenges are not the same.
Well, and I think it's different, you know, probably in, you know, different parts of the country, different families, you know, everybody has their own little unique take on it, I think. I don't disagree with what you're saying about the expectations and all that. But, you know, one of the things I've seen a lot, is the younger guys that I've worked with who basically went away to college and then crashed, most of them, you know, and I hear these parents that say, you know, he just needs to grow up. He really just needs to get a job or maybe finish school or whatever. But, you know, he needs to man up. He just needs to be a man. And, you know, you look at how this person came to be where he is. You know, he grew up in a family where the parents did everything for them, you know, out of their own fear that their son would fail, you know, so they paid all their bills and, you know, and got him a car. They did everything, you know, and then they sent him away to college and they start having problems. And then they say, you just need to man up. I mean, it's ridiculous. They're not teaching them how to do these things, and then they're shaming them for not knowing how to do them.
Not teaching them how to swim and then throwing into
right,
deep
right.
end.
Well, what's wrong with you?
Swim.
You're drowning. There's something wrong with you. I mean, come on.
Right.
That's what happens. A lot. And I think the other thing with guys.
Well, what do you want them to do? What should that parent do? I mean,
well, I think.
Does every?
Well, I'll tell you. Like, my son's room is dirty a lot. Okay, his bedroom is dirty a lot. That's because I refuse to clean his bedroom. I will not be. And, every once in a while, there will be a time when he really wants to do something. And I'll say, you know what? If your bedroom looked nicer, I'd be more inclined to, I mean, I dangle a carrot out there, but what I'm not going to do is do it for him. And when he asks me for help with his homework, that's what I'll do. I'll pose questions to him, but I don't give him answers. He can find them on his own, and I want to help him learn how to find them on his own. When I was growing up, we had my parents are divorced, and my mother went back to graduate school after my parents divorced. So we had Carmelita and Alma, two ladies that lived with us that helped housekeepers, and they were not allowed to make our beds, or we had to do all of that ourselves. It was not, they were forbidden to do, they could not do that. We had to do that. We had to clean the kitchen at night. After dinner, we had to, set the table and all that stuff. So, this sounds so tra-la-la talking about Carmelita. Oh, well, I mean,
but the fact is that, we had to do that. And you are right in that, nowadays it's not necessarily, the dictum in every home.
No, and it's in these kids, it's not their fault. I mean, what happens is when somebody does something for you, you believe you can't do it for yourself. And, there are areas where my parents did do certain things that, it ended up being harder for me to figure out how to do on my own. And it was more about me believing in myself than anything else. I mean, there's that too, but I think we.
So how do you correct that? If a guy he's graduated from college and he's lost, and let's say he's falls into addictive behavior, or begins drinking alcoholically or whatnot. What do you recommend for course correction on a young man like that?
Well, I mean, first of all, learning to ask for help. He needs to learn to ask for help when he needs it, but also believing in them.
How do you get him to believe in it?
No, you believe in them. Build them up. We build people up.
You let him know.
Yes.
That you believe in him.
Yes. You can do this. Just like they did with you at Rolling Stone.
Yeah.
That meant a lot to you when they did that.
It meant everything. It was the shot in the arm. It was the boost. It was the confidence.
Think about it. Think about these parents who have gone and paid for their kids to get into these colleges. Think about how those kids feel about that. They have to feel like shit about themselves when their parents, the people who love them the most, go out into the world and say, I don't believe in my child enough to think that they can make it into a mediocre college.
Well, they don't.
So I mean,
those parents are frustrated more than anything. So they don't really know what to say.
Right.
And I think that at that point that the influence does have to come from an outside.
Right. But that's source. What I thought about when I heard that story was those kids. How do they feel? What's the message that they're getting from their parents when that happens?
So the message, I believe in you. It's how you begin.
I think that's important.
And then well, they're still lost.
Well, but you know,
right?
when you do it, baby steps, you do a little bit at a time, then you begin to believe in yourself.
Well, success begets success.
Right.
Just like failure can beget failure.
Right.
So you try to give them, I would imagine, bite-sized
right.
Things that they can actually accomplish that will lead to some kind of success that then gets that ball rolling, right?
Yeah, and I run into a lot of guys just feeling like they don't deserve good things, because like there's one guy who comes to mind in particular. His parents ended up sending him away for addiction treatment. He drank alcoholically. He became a mess, and it was a problem to the family, no doubt. Caused a lot of stress, cost a lot of money. And he, has carried around that shame. And, part of it was, like really just not even launching into college, just like, basically never even starting, but having gone away to college. So there's that, he feels like he's done so many terrible things that, he doesn't deserve another chance to go to college. When really like, it's so hard to be a young person. I hated my 20s. I didn't hate it, but your 20s are really, really hard. You just don't know.
Sure.
You just don't know.
Sure.
And so, there's a lot of, one of the things that I can offer these young guys is, listen, I know that you think because your friends have already graduated from college and you're 21 and you haven't yet. I know you think you're old, but you're not. You're not. That's the kind of stuff you run into. Like you think it's the end of the world.
Yeah. Do you give them examples of big successes? Because there are examples out there.
Yeah. Well, and they're pretty easy to see all around them. Most of these people who do this kind of work that I do have had similar experiences to mine, and they end up going away. Some of them don't go to college until they're in their 40s and end up with master's degrees, So yeah, there are plenty of examples, but still, when you're stuck in that place in your head, nothing's going to.
Well, the examples, can bring hope. That's the thing about it. An example of somebody. Just look at it this way. I think it was, JC. This may be totally, not a fact at all. It may be a bad fact, but I think like J.C. Penney was 50 something years old before he really had any success at all, as a retailer. I think it was him. It may have been some other big deal retailer.
Yeah.
But so there are examples, and those examples can really bolster someone who's in the depths of this despair. Like, I'm never going to be anything. I'm never going to, I'm so far behind. I'm so, whatever. All this stuff that, just, perpetuates the downward spiral.
Well, and then
the
shame
that's something that everyone.
It is debilitating.
Anyone that's disappointed anyone, there's shame attached to it.
Right.
If you're, married to someone and someone has, an affair, and there's eternal shame associated with that. Even if you've been forgiven and you, everything's on the up and up.
Shame's a tough one. You guys should do an issue on shame if you haven't already.
We've done. There's not a lot we have.
Well, I'll tell you, speaking of stories like this, I just did, it's not out yet, an episode that I did, but there's a friend of mine, who's a poet. His name's Spencer Reese. And
that's a good name for
it. Is a great name, isn't it?
It's a wonderful name for
So Spencer,
he could be a movie star too.
Yeah. He's actually been in a documentary. But Spencer, I met him. He did a reading in a class that I took, a Bible as literature class. And we got to talking, and he's also in recovery. So, we became friends. He worked at Brooks Brothers in Palm Beach for a long time, eventually moved to a bigger store, but worked for them for many, many years while he wrote poetry and lived very modestly. And he tried to get this book published for 15 years, and it got turned down over 300 times. And he eventually got it published. It's called The Clerk's Tale.
300 times? Are there that
over 300 times?
He must have been turned down internationally.
Or something. It is. But you know what happened? He got it published, and then he won a Guggenheim Fellowship.
Oh my God.
And he became a what's the word I'm looking for? Fulbright scholar. He won all kinds of awards.
Boy, once he hit the gas pedal, he really.
Yeah, I mean, it took him forever, but once he got it published, he hit the jackpot with the same book. I mean,
that's great. And talk about tenacity and talk about
and never giving up, and you just never know.
So does he only write now, or
No, actually, he's got a really interesting story. You'll have to listen to the episode when it comes out. He came out with one other book of poetry so far. He also is a cleric. He actually went to divinity school at Harvard and, lived in the dorm where Ralph Waldo Emerson lived. And, and he kind of didn't know what he was going to do with that part of his life, but he ended up, moving to Spain and, working for the Anglican Church, or first to Portugal. Now he's in Madrid. He
should have stayed here. The Anglican Church could use him here. The Anglican Church, I'm Episcopalian, and the Anglican Church here is, oh my goodness, lots going on.
I mean, he's lived an interesting life and is a really great guy.
He sounds fantastic. What a good friend. That's a good guy to know.
Well, I've been really lucky with this podcast thing. I mean, over the years, I've been able to meet some extremely interesting people, yourself included. I know you listened to the first episode with Lucia. Part 2 of that's coming out soon. But
did this one ever end?
This one's got to end. I'm trying to bring this to a crescendo here.
This one may never end. There may never be a part 2 to Lucia because.
Well, yeah, but but the thing is, Caesar needs to go out. I need to take the dog for a walk, and I need to get some food down my gullet.
Caesar has barked, and Caesar has already let it be.
The only reason he's not barking now is because I'm holding him in my lap and giving him a little bit of attention. But
that's really sweet. I'll tell you, I was talking to someone the other day who said something very, very funny, because I love Florida and actually come down there a lot, just for fun and for work too. But I was talking about Miami, and this guy I know said, "Oh, Miami, everyone there, they just have herds of Pomeranians."
Oh, yeah.
I thought that is a funny.
That is a funny thing to say.
Oh my! Everyone there, they all have their little dogs, and they all have their Gucci this, and they're just herds of Pomeranians, and just the image of that in my mind.
Well, that is funny. One of my thing with Miami is that I love about it. I mean, it's so many beautiful women, first of all, but you could close your eyes and listen, and you could be anywhere in the world.
Yeah, it's.
I mean, you really could.
I wouldn't. Yeah, I think it's like being in a movie. I love it there. I used to have this thing about the Miami that it's tacky.
Well, from where I live, I don't like driving there, but I like being there.
Yeah, I have learned to love. I have rediscovered Miami. I love it. I think it's great. I think it is it's like you're in a crazy, wonderful, over the top, colorful spirit infused movie.
Yeah.
I don't know I want to live there all the time, but it is like a great big old bowl of
flavor. It's a lot of flavor. And, you know, and I've had friends people who grew up there love it there, you know, but, you know, the people who I know who have moved there really, you know, that they ended up kind of not wanting to be there for very long and moving away.
Well, I don't know that it's a great place to, no, I shouldn't really say this because I don't want to offend anyone, but to raise children. I don't know that I'd want to raise children in Miami, maybe. I don't know, but it's a great place to go. It's really an extraordinarily fun and colorful. And I know that there's an underbelly to it that is kind of corrupt and a bunch of bad stuff. But the surface that I see is delectable and
it's
wonderful.
Interesting. There's lots to do. And, you know, really Florida in general.
I don't do that much interesting stuff in Miami.
No.
I mostly just like chill and
lay by the pool
and run around with the herds of Pomeranians.
Okay. Well, you'll have to let me know the next time you're down. Maybe we can have lunch or something and try to avoid the Pomeranians.
We'll avoid it. We'll go to Palm Beach. We'll go to Beach A. How about that?
That'd be fantastic.
All right.
Well, listen, man. This has been great. I really enjoy talking to you. I really appreciate the friendship that you've shown me.
My pleasure. This has been a kick. I've enjoyed it very much.
Good. Me too. And I'm looking forward to see what comes of all this. I have ideas about how I'm going to, I mean, we're going on 3 episodes right now. Breaking
all right.
This
well,
thing
if there's I really didn't tell you. If you need to fill, you can call me back at some point, and I will give you more meat to add to bones because I can talk about other stuff too. But this has been fun, and Caesar needs to go out now, so I will let you do that, and we will we'll
stay in touch.
Soon, okay.
All right, John.
All right.
Thank you. Yeah.
Right,
bye. All right, there you go. Another episode in the books. Thanks for listening. You can learn more about the show and this episode's guest at thepathtooauthenticity.com. If you enjoyed this episode, please share it with someone. Leave us a review on Apple Podcasts or wherever you listen. Every little bit helps. I want to thank the band Punk Rock Opera, whose music you hear throughout the show. Their songs are used with permission from the artist and under a Creative Commons license. If you're so inclined, check out the Patreon community. As soon as I do these interviews, I upload them to Patreon, where the content is only available to patrons, and for just a couple bucks a month. I usually post audio content, their exclusive audio content, probably 8 times a month, if not more. And as these new episodes are released, as soon as they're done, they're available to patrons. So sometimes that might be 2 weeks before an episode is released or even longer. Usually it's a few days. Anyway, if you want to support the show, that's a great way to do it. So thanks again for investing your time. It's a big deal to me. Thank you for supporting me and supporting the show. I hope you keep coming back. Be nice.
That's our story. I hope you enjoyed the punk rock opera. And we have one last piece of music for you. It goes like this.
Okay, go. breakers, we will not fall. We are the bad plans, man, we got our ears pressed to the wall. You wanna take, you wanna break everything that you can't stand. You cannot break us, you cannot make us, we are the Jedi, man. We're just the losers that lived up the street, living on these chords, simple beats. You wanna cheat, you wanna stop, you wanna tear us down. We are the bad plans, man, we got our roots stuck in the ground.
Musical generation, self-made bands. We cut our teeth with bloody hands. The rage has instilled in us. Can feed a crowd, give them a rush. Thank you. And good night.